Elijah Thompson, the meticulous manager of the Metropolis Bank, carefully observed the order of the bank and the behavior of its employees. In his late 30s, tall, black, and athletically built, Elijah was dressed in harmony with the luxurious atmosphere of the bank. His brown eyes had a keen gaze that noticed every detail. His strong posture and natural charisma commanded respect from employees and customers alike. That morning, however, something caught his attention. Around 10:30 a.m., a black man walking toward the revolving door caught his attention. His worn jeans, faded t-shirt, and unkempt hair immediately stood out in the sophisticated atmosphere of the bank. Elijah sensed that this man was not just an ordinary customer. Just then, however, a customer in the bank, realizing that Elijah was black, gave him a condescending look. Elijah, who was used to such glances, tried to ignore the situation, but deep down it bothered him every time. Elijah was very successful in his work, but he had to struggle with the racism he faced in his career. Over the years, he had to deal with people who questioned his abilities and distrusted him simply because of his skin color. He faced a similar situation today, but Elijah didn't let such obstacles stop him, nor would they stop him today. Marcus, the security guard, a stern-looking man who was familiar with the workings of the bank, walked up to him. "How can I help you, sir?" he asked in a gentle but firm voice. The man looked around uncomfortably, but remained calm and replied, "I just need to withdraw money." Elijah was quickly watching the scene. Marcus's gentle but firm approach to the customer showed his loyalty to the bank's rules, but Elijah knew that sometimes he also had to face racism in such situations. Because he was black, he was viewed with suspicion by some customers and even some employees. "I'm sorry, sir. Our bank rules require our customers to be appropriately dressed," Marcus explained, blocking the entrance with his body. The man sighed slightly, looking a little disappointed but not arguing. He nodded and turned and walked away. As Elijah watched the man walk away, he instinctively sensed that something was wrong. The young teller, Olivia, was a young woman in her early 20s with brown hair pulled back. She watched the scene with curiosity. She was getting used to the strict rules and routines of the bank. But she had also witnessed Elijah's interactions with customers. She noticed the customers' questioning or prejudiced looks towards Elijah. After the man left, Olivia turned to Elijah. "Who was that man?" she asked, curiosity evident in her voice. But her curiosity wasn't limited to the man's identity. Olivia was also curious about how Elijah dealt with situations like this. Elijah answered without taking his eyes off the papers. "Just someone who doesn't understand the importance of presenting yourself properly in a reputable institution," he said shortly. Olivia sensed the coldness in Elijah's words but didn't ask any more questions. She knew that Elijah was used to this kind of situation, but she still found it difficult to understand how even such a strong and determined man could deal with such prejudice. In the days that followed, Olivia saw the man outside the bank several more times. He didn't try to go inside again, but he stood on the sidewalk across the street observing the bank. Sometimes he smiled so faintly that it was almost imperceptible, which only added to Olivia's curiosity. Olivia wondered how Elijah would react to the situation, and at the same time, tried to better understand the challenges he faced. One morning, as she was organizing the documents, Olivia saw him again, this time standing outside a cafe. She decided she could no longer ignore her curiosity. During a break, she left the bank and walked towards the cafe. The man was drinking coffee at a table on the sidewalk. As Olivia approached, he looked up and gave her a kind and calm smile. The next morning, Olivia arrived at the bank early. The streets were not yet fully alive, but were slowly beginning to stir with the first light of the morning. Olivia's goal was to see the mystery man Elijah again and to talk to him in more detail. As she approached the bank, she saw Elijah waiting on the sidewalk across the street. Elijah was watching the bank with his hands in his pockets and a thoughtful expression. He was dressed more smartly than yesterday, in dark slacks and a light blue shirt. Olivia took a deep breath and walked toward him with determined steps. "Good morning, Elijah," Olivia said, feeling both curious and a little worried. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Elijah turned back to her, calm curiosity in his eyes. A slight smile appeared on his face. "Sure, Olivia, you're early today. What do you want to know?" Olivia glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Then she took a deep breath and began her words carefully. "I still don't quite understand what you're doing here. Why are you observing the bank so carefully? And what did you mean by assessing yesterday?" Elijah was silent for a long moment, looking at the bank building. There was a professional seriousness in his eyes. "Olivia," he began, his voice low but clear, "my job is to analyze the security of important places. I have been assigned to secretly examine the Metropolis Bank. My goal is to identify weak points and vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by malicious people." Olivia felt a mixture of relief and concern at this explanation. Elijah didn't seem dangerous, but the idea of the bank being monitored in this way made her uncomfortable. "So why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" she asked, trying to remain calm, but there was a slight reproach in her voice. Elijah smiled slightly, understandingly. "If I had told you from the beginning, I would have ruined the surprise. I have to see how things work without people knowing they're being watched. It allows me to make the most accurate and objective assessment." Olivia nodded, beginning to understand the logic of Elijah's behavior. But as she tried to satisfy her curiosity, she asked another question. "But now you've told me," she said, frowning. "Doesn't that jeopardize your assessment? Or is there some special circumstance that makes you trust me?" Elijah shrugged, relaxed. "I trust you, Olivia. From the first time we met, I sensed that you were different. I know you want to do the right thing. Besides, I've done enough observing to get the information I need. Now I need some help, and you, as an insider, can help me." Olivia thought, both excited and worried by Elijah's words. "So what have you found so far?" she asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Elijah looked at her with a serious expression, concern in his eyes. "Much more than I expected," he said. "There are serious vulnerabilities that need to be fixed, and I'm afraid that vulnerability is not limited to physical security." By the time the meeting was over, Olivia's heart was pounding. Alexander's words had sent a wave of unease through the bank. Everyone wanted to get back to work as soon as possible, but Olivia's mind kept drifting back to her conversation with Elijah. She tried to pull herself together, but she felt something was wrong. Elijah's silent observations and the process he called evaluation now took on a much greater meaning. Olivia felt nervous as she returned to her desk. She wondered if Elijah's observations and what he had said about the bank had anything to do with the threat Alexander had mentioned. She needed to see Elijah again, to get more information from him. His instincts told him that the security of the bank was in more danger than he had thought. That morning, it was quieter than usual inside the bank. Customers seemed to sense the bank's tense atmosphere, and everyone was trying to get their business done quickly and leave. Olivia was waiting for Elijah to reappear. But as the hours passed, there was no sign of him. The uncertainty was trying Olivia's patience. When the lunch break came, Olivia decided to seize the opportunity. She quietly got up from her desk and walked out of the bank without Alexander's eyes on her. She walked to the front of the cafe where she usually saw Elijah. But this time, Elijah wasn't there. Olivia began to worry. Had Elijah really sensed danger, or was something else going on? After waiting in the cafe for a while longer, Olivia decided to turn back. As she approached the bank, she saw a familiar figure on the sidewalk across the street. Elijah was standing on the corner watching the bank. Olivia took a deep breath and walked quickly toward him. "Elijah!" Olivia called out as she reached him. "I need you. I need you to tell me what happened at the bank." Elijah turned toward her, his face his usual calm expression. "Calm down, Olivia. Everything is under control," he said. But the seriousness in his eyes contradicted his words. "Under control? They say there's a serious threat at the bank. Alexander is worried that there might be an attack on the employees," Olivia whispered, her voice demanding answers at once. Elijah let out a deep sigh. "Olivia, I'll be honest with you. I have serious concerns about the security of the bank. There are major gaps in both physical and digital security. And these are just the surface issues. This threat is bigger than you think. Olivia shuddered. So what can we do? If this is so serious, why don't we act now? Elijah narrowed his eyes at Olivia. Because I need time. We have to wait for everything to come out. If we rush, we could miss the real threat. But I trust you, Olivia. You'll help me through this, won't you? Olivia hesitated, but she saw the determination in Elijah's eyes. She had no other choice. Of course, she said, her voice shaky but determined. I'll do whatever it takes. Elijah smiled slightly. Great, then we'll wait and watch for the right moment. Stay safe, Olivia. As Olivia left Elijah's side, she felt uneasy. As she walked back to the bank, she thought about Elijah's words. What was it that made this silent observer watch the bank so intently? And how far was Olivia prepared to go into the unknown? When Olivia returned to the bank, she felt a weight on her head. She was torn between Elijah's words and Alexander's warnings. She didn't know what to do, but she sensed something wasn't right. The atmosphere inside the bank grew more tense as the day progressed. Employees eyed each other suspiciously. Security guards were on constant alert. By the end of the day, the bank began to empty. As Olivia organized the paperwork on her desk, she noticed Marcus, one of the security guards, talking to a man at the door. The man was dressed in a suit and had a serious expression, but something seemed off. Olivia instinctively began to watch Marcus. The man's face was tense. His eyes were constantly scanning the area. Marcus asked a few questions before letting the man into the bank. But in the meantime, Elijah entered the bank and went straight to Alexander. Elijah had a serious look on his face, and Olivia sensed a storm was brewing. When Elijah started talking to Alexander, Olivia paid attention. Even though she couldn't hear their conversation, she could tell from Elijah's body language that something was wrong. Finally, Elijah's voice rose. We have to act now. There is no time left, Alexander. Alexander seemed surprised by Elijah's sudden outburst, but decided to trust him. Okay, Elijah, tell me what we need to do. Elijah looked around and then called out to Marcus. Get this man out now. This could be a trap. Marcus, hearing this warning, acted quickly and took the man outside. The man walked out of the bank without protest, but the menacing look in his eyes sent chills down Olivia's spine. Elijah turned to Alexander and continued to speak quietly. As Olivia watched them talk, she sensed that the bank was in real danger. After Elijah gave Alexander more information about the bank's vulnerabilities, he turned to Olivia and walked toward her. Olivia, I trust you. I need you to help me through this, he said. Olivia didn't know what to do in the face of Elijah's determination. If what Elijah said was true, the future of the bank was at stake, and Olivia was caught in the middle of it. That night, Olivia's mind was filled with Elijah's words. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts kept wandering back to what Elijah had said. She tried to understand what had happened at the bank, but everything seemed so complicated. Could she really trust Elijah? Or was it all just a game? In the morning, Olivia was determined. She had to talk to Elijah again and find out the truth, but this time, she had to decide if she could trust him. When she stepped into the bank, she believed that Elijah needed her. But at what cost would that trust come? Olivia had a feeling that once she entered the bank, it would all be over. Elijah's words, Alexander's warnings, everything made sense. But Olivia couldn't put all the pieces together. Inside the bank, it was quieter than usual. The employees buried in their work, no one talking to each other. The silence only increased the tension inside Olivia. Elijah was standing in a corner inside the bank. His eyes were constantly moving, looking around. Olivia approached him and asked quietly, Elijah, what's going to happen today? Elijah took a deep breath and turned to Olivia. Olivia, everything will be revealed today. There are great dangers inside and outside the bank, but I'm not ready, she said, her voice shaking. The seriousness in Elijah's eyes worried Olivia even more. What about us? What are we going to do? Olivia asked, trying to suppress her fear. Elijah put a hand on Olivia's shoulder. You stay with me, Olivia. We're in this together. But we have to be careful. One misstep could ruin everything. Olivia had to trust Elijah. As she walked around the bank, her eyes were constantly scanning the area. Marcus and Ryan, the security guards, were also on alert. They didn't know when it would all blow up, but they had to be ready. Later in the day, there were several suspicious people trying to get inside the bank. Elijah and the security guards acted quickly, removing them from the bank. But this was only the beginning. The real danger was that one of them might have hacked into the bank's security system. When Olivia returned to Elijah, there was deep concern in Elijah's eyes. "Olivia, it's time. We have to act now. If we don't stop, it will all end," Elijah said, squeezing Olivia's hand. Olivia had to trust Elijah. There was a stir inside the bank. Everyone had a feeling that something was going to happen, but no one knew exactly what. This uncertainty only increased Olivia's fear. Finally, when Elijah and Olivia entered Alexander's room, they had to face reality. The security of the bank was at stake, and if they didn't take the right steps, everything would end. Olivia stood by Elijah's side, ready to watch the end of this dangerous game. Elijah took one last look at Alexander. "Now or never," Elijah said with final determination. The future of the bank depended on this final confrontation. And in that moment, Olivia understood everything. Everything that happened inside and outside the bank was part of these dark truths. She had trusted Elijah, but at what cost? In retrospect, that was the only question Olivia had. Who would really win?